Welcome back to the next episode of Sports Talk with Hawk. I am Hawk, and it is a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous 71-degree Wednesday morning here in Indiana. Thank you so much for stopping by. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and like the podcast. It really does help me out, and I deeply appreciate it. Thank you ever so much. All right, we got a good amount to get into today. We got um our weekly 3 W's and 3 L's. We'll get to that here in a second. Yesterday we did the panic meter for some of the teams that had higher expectations coming into the season, where they're at and what the level of panic should be. And I believe that some of that is going to end up playing out in the trades as we are now 1 week from the trade deadline. Or I should say 6 days from the trade deadline. Today we had the Vikings proving that they're trying to compete now. I'm not going to say win now. Sam Darnold has a lot of flaws for Kevin O'Connell to have to work around. They showed up in the Ram game. They showed up in the Lions game. But they want to compete now. They're too good to lose a lot. Their left tackle went down for the year. They made a trade with the Jaguars for Cam Robinson. I think it's a smart, simple trade. Basically, it's dang it, the word is all of a sudden leaving me. And it'll come back here in a little bit. But it is a conditional. There you go, conditional pick. And if Cam Robinson starts the rest of the year, the Jacksonville Jaguars get a fourth round. Everything is based off of playing time. If he starts the rest of the year, number one, they get a fourth round pick from the Vikings. Number two, they don't lose their sixth round pick. If he ends up getting injured, misses a bunch of time, Jacksonville still gets a fifth, but they also get rid of their sixth. They basically swap the fifth for the sixth. So a little bit different how that deal works, but I do believe it works out for both teams in the end. Another trade is the Baltimore Ravens did what they didn't need to do, and they got another receiver from Carolina. They make a trade for Deontay Johnson, which I think definitely helps the receiving core 1,000%. But that's not where the problem on this team is. The Baltimore Ravens have a secondary problem. Very secondary problem. In the literal sense, it's the secondary. They cannot hold up late in games. They're very bad against the pass. That's been their Achilles heel this year. And to me, that's what they really need to fix. That is really what they need to fix. So the Ravens make the trade, get Deontay Johnson. Good for the Panthers. They get a pick out of this. Fantastic for them. They're continuing looking ahead, building for the future. Works for me. Can't really argue against any of it. Whatever. Then the big news that happened. Now, there are a lot of stories that are going to come out. They even acknowledged them when they made this decision. The Indianapolis Colts have benched Anthony Richardson to start Joe Flacco. Meaning the AFC is weak enough right now that they want to try to vie for that seventh wild card spot. I'll be honest, the Bills, the Ravens, the Texans, the Chiefs, those four are locked in. I feel like the Steelers are probably going to end up making it based on the fact that I don't know if their schedule down the road ends up being as hard as it was because the Browns aren't great. The Bengals aren't great. I do think the Ravens will beat them both times. Russ's shortcomings will come to fruition there, but I do think the Ravens have to make a trade for secondary help. They really do. But then you got the Chargers and the Broncos, who are currently holding the wild card spots. And the reality is, if you're the Colts, you're hoping and praying that Flacco brings a miracle. But I'm sorry. I said they were going to lose 4 of the next 5, starting with the Texans. We got at the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. We're home against the Bills. Then we got the Jets currently on Sunday Night Football. That'll be flexed out after they get smoked this week. That will be flexed out this week. So that game, I believe, will be flexed out Sunday Night Football. But they play the Jets, and then they play the Lions. 3 of the next 4 are losses. There's no way this team can compete with teams like that. Run it down our throats. Absolutely explosive offenses. And, Flacco isn't big play. It's methodical. It's, down the field slow. The defense won't be able to hold up. It's that simple. But I do believe he gives them a shot at 7 wins, maybe 8 wins. If we end up being 5-7 after the Lion game, because we're 4-4 right now, we lose 3, win the Jets game, 5-7. Gotta go 2-3 the rest of the way. We got the game against Jacksonville still, which I'm sorry, Jacksonville's better than us. It's a coaching and a schematics problem. But they're better. It's a division game, and they're flat out better. Look out for Tennessee in a dome. Mason Rudolph looks better than Will Levis in that offense right now. I don't know who they're going to trade away. So there's a lot of different things. Kansas City made the trade for, I like calling him Uche from New England, which I thought the Lions would really benefit from getting, but the Lions sound like they're going after Hassan Reddick as the Jets are looking to move to the future, because Reddick doesn't really help them right now. Fair enough. So that's the trade. That's the moves right now. Stephon Diggs is now out for the year with a torn ACL, which means this is his only year in Houston, unless he takes a pay cut next year coming back from a torn ACL. All right. Here we go. 3 W's and 3 L's heading into week number 9. Like I said, next week we will be doing our half-season review. That'll be next week. That'll be probably... We're still going to do the 3 W's and 3 L's. I may do that instead of a recap. So we'll see. But 3 W's and 3 L's. Like I said, for those, or like I've said before, for those who don't know, the 3 W's are 3 teams that lost last week that need a W this week to get back on track or try to right the ship. The 3 L's are 3 teams that have to avoid a loss badly after winning last week, and they need to build momentum. So this week for the 3 W's, this first one, I think it's Imperial. I believe this has head coaching significance on it. Number 1, the Bengals need to beat the Raiders at home. If they lose to the Raiders at home, the calls for Zach Taylor's head are going to be loud. Now that team, this is a management problem. Remember I said there's 4 prongs. The 4th one doesn't always come into play. It's more like the ground wire of ownership / management. This is the Bengals' problem. ownership / management, players. They don't have them. They let them all walk. If they lose to the Raiders, I believe T. Higgins gets traded. And he can be traded anywhere because Cincinnati would be covering his contract anyway. So he'll get traded away, get a third-round pick out of him, moving forward. And that may be what a couple teams are waiting on. I think this game for Cincinnati is so big for them to stay in the playoff hunt, to stay potentially relevant. They need this game. They cannot go 3-6. Yes, I know you can still bounce back. I get that. You can't lose to the Raiders at home. You can't lose to the Raiders at home. Okay? But hey, well, anything can happen. That defense has been bad. Brock Bowers is a stud. Who knows? Who knows? So that's number one. Bengals over the Raiders. Number two is the Ravens over the Broncos. The Ravens have to bounce back after losing last week. Division game, we're going to give them a little bit, division games are always flipping close. Always. Okay? Winston got a full week of practice. Winston didn't look bad. I hate the bozo. He is so arrogant and so vain. It's not even funny. I don't like him at all. But he does have a better arm than Watson. He's got a clearer head than Watson, which is hard to have when you're as arrogant and big-headed as he is. But nonetheless, division game, that's what it is. Okay? It's a division game. Now, the Ravens, back home, they should blow out the Broncos. The Broncos do not have the personnel to match the Ravens. They should blow them out. But Bo Nix could, if they can get protection, Bo Nix could carve up the Ravens' defense. That pass defense has been bad. If Troy Franklin would just freaking catch the balls that Bo Nix is throwing to him, he's dropped 2 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Bo Nix is trying to get his buddy involved. They've got the rapport, but Franklin's got to pull it in. So we'll see what happens. But the Ravens have they've got to get the W this week over the Broncos. They need the W over the Broncos. They've got to keep pace. That way they don't lose sight of the Chiefs, even though I think the Chiefs right now have a pretty good inside track until a little bit later here. They're going to play their tough schedule here in a little bit. They'll play the tough schedule and whatnot. It'll get there. Don't worry. But for now, Chiefs have the inside track on the number 1 seed in the AFC. So number 1 is Cincinnati. Number 2 is Baltimore. Number 3, after that loss to the Rams on Thursday Night Football, you get a mini bye week with the extra rest at home, Sunday Night Football against a Colts team that is trying to figure out what they are. Now, I do want to say this. I went to the Raider game last year with Minshew. Went to the Miami game with Richardson. I do want to say this. Shane Steichen is not a genius in how he sets the offense up. There are still quite a few media personalities that are going, you've got this guy that's an absolute genius with play calling. No, he's not. No, he's not. His scripted plays are garbage. Absolute garbage. I've watched those two games with those two different quarterbacks from the same end zone, the same view. That offense looks like trash. Steichen's offense, Steichen himself, is not a genius play caller, not a genius play designer. He sucks. And he can't elevate his quarterback. So I do want to say that. But the third team that needs a W is Minnesota. They make the trade for Cam Robinson. I doubt he's going to play. He could. He could. You know, understanding the offense isn't as bad. You got Sunday, you got till Sunday night to learn it. So we'll see. But Minnesota needs to come out. The Lions play the Packers. Love will probably be out. Lions get the W. If the Vikings get the W, they have sole possession of second place. Sole possession of second place in the NFC North. So to recap, my 3 W's for the week: the Bengals over the Raiders, the Ravens over the Broncos, and the Vikings over the Colts. 3 teams that need a W after losing last week. Get going. Got to get going the right direction. Now, the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's turn it around. Here we go. 3 teams that need to avoid a loss after a good win last week. 3 teams that need to avoid a loss after last week. The Atlanta Falcons. Listen, they're playing the Cowboys at home. This is a Cowboys team that looked like absolute garbage in the third quarter, looked okay, but only scored, 7 or 10 points in the first half, and then had garbage time touchdowns. Okay? Let's just be honest. Let's just be honest. Atlanta cannot lose to the Cowboys. They can't. They just beat the Buccaneers again on the road in Tampa Bay. They just beat them again. They have sole possession of first place. They need to keep it. Time to put the pedal down and get to that 12-win mark like you were predicted to at the beginning of the year. That's what needs to happen. The Atlanta Falcons cannot generate a pass rush. If I were them, I'd be going after people. I don't think the Saints are going to trade in division, but I'd be going after the Saints. I would be going after the Titans. If I'm the Falcons, I'm trying to figure out how to get Jeffrey Simmons on my team. That's what I'm doing. Going to Miami. Go to New England. Carolina. I don't know if Carolina would do in division or not. Carolina. They need to try to make a move. Judon is not making a difference like he should be. The defense isn't playing horrible because the back end is really good. The secondary is solid. But a secondary can't cover forever, and that's the problem. So at this point, I make a trade, get somebody else in there. You have to. You really have to. Get somebody else in there. Make the move. So the number one team that needs to avoid a loss is the Atlanta Falcons. Absolutely need to avoid that loss. 1,000%. All right, the next team that needs to avoid the loss, Buffalo Bills. You just got a huge win out west over Seattle, which is a playoff caliber team. They were without DK Metcalf. That's fine. You dominated the game. Kenneth Walker couldn't run. Charbonnet couldn't run. Geno Smith never looked comfortable. The Buffalo Bills are getting healthier. If I were them, I would still make a trade. I'm going to New Orleans with them. I'm going after Demario Davis. I'm going after Willie Gay. I need another linebacker to be able to solidify the middle of that defense, to be able to give me another aspect with the run. I made the trade for Amari Cooper. That solidified the offense. The offense looks really good with Cooper, Coleman. The offense looks good. You don't have to touch the offense. Defense, I'd still try to go get Demario Davis, try to get Gay, and see if you could strengthen the middle core again. It was one of their strong points for a long time. I think it's kind of weak right now, getting stronger, but I think they could use one more. I really do. And remember, this is the team that has a bunch of cap room next year because of the Von Miller contract that will no longer be there. So just keep that in mind. But the Buffalo Bills at home against Miami, don't let Miami trick you, fool you. You know, they just lost to the Cardinals. They are slightly desperate. It's a division game. You already beat them once. It's in Buffalo. Probably going to be windy. Run the dang ball. Beat Miami. Get out of there with another W. 7-2 halfway through the year. That's what you want to be. Make a trade for a linebacker. Maybe you make it for a secondary, but I think linebacker would be the better spot. That's what I would do. So the number 2 team that needs to avoid a loss this week is the Buffalo Bills. The third team that needs to avoid the loss is the Philadelphia Eagles. Why? Well, basically because the Commanders have everything in front of them. That's why. Because the Commanders will probably be 7-2 after this week. You can't lose to the Jaguars. Jaguars are slightly desperate. They are an up and down team, but they can score. Give them credit. They fought with the Packers. I had them winning. I thought at the end they'd be able to pull it out. Play calling sucked again, but with how up and down Philadelphia has been, you get a bad game out of Hurts. Guess what? You're good. Get a bad game out of Hurts, just execute, and you're all set. If you're Philadelphia, you got the win against Cincinnati last week. That was huge. Now, you've got to avoid the bad loss against Jacksonville when Washington is still humming along and just moving right along. Seemingly every week getting better and better and better and better. You got to avoid the loss, Philly. You have to avoid the loss against Jacksonville. Your secondary still has holes in it. Still has holes. Jump on Philly early, and that's when they get in trouble because they got to get away from Saquon. Their bread and butter is going to be being able to run their offense. If you need Jalen to be a superhero, it ain't going to freaking happen. The guy is not a superhero. He wasn't even worthy of where he got drafted, let alone trying to do something that a star quarterback should do. He ain't a star quarterback. He got his money. He's small. He's athletic. That's it. He's not a star quarterback. Don't ask Jalen to go win you games. Saquon Barkley was signed to win you football games. Run the ball. Give it to him. Let him control everything. If Jacksonville jumps on these guys 14-0, Sirianni panics and starts having Hurts just throw up bombs. Listen, the safeties for Jacksonville aren't bad. They're going to pick them off. If Hurts throws 2 interceptions, the Eagles lose. You've got to be able to stay in your game plan, have to be able to protect your worst offensive player, which is Hurts. Don't let him make the mistakes. Philly, you have to avoid this loss to keep pace with Washington. Because Washington is going to go into Dallas on Thanksgiving and beat Dallas in Jerry World on Thanksgiving. Their tough schedule stretch is coming up, so you'll probably flip-flop them in the division. But Philly, you were supposed to. Even in winning, your teams have looked like garbage. Your wins have looked bad. The team doesn't look like a complete unit. But you need to beat Jacksonville. You cannot lose to the Jaguars right now. So to recap, 3 teams that need a W this week. The Bengals, the Ravens, and the Vikings. The 3 teams that have to avoid a bad loss. The Falcons, the Bills, and the Eagles. There's going to be more trade news. There will be more trade news. If I do a podcast tomorrow, I know we've been I've been taking a break in the middle because the top 10, everybody does a top 10. You know, I slightly enjoy doing them. It's like everybody's doing a top 10. It's not something that, like, the 3 W's and 3 L's I like are for me. I like that. It's a different side of looking at the games. I do want to, like I said yesterday, we did go 4-3 in our picks this weekend. But even on an even bigger note, in the Pick'em league that I am in, that picks the spreads. So this is the over-under spreads of points. I won 12 this past week. 12. I was very happy. I've actually been getting better and better and more consistent and more comfortable. I've actually been closing the gap on first place. I was like 66th 3 weeks ago. I'm now 30th. Took me a little while to figure out how the spreads and stuff work. It's a lot more mathematics, and it's looking at the game in a little bit different of a prism, which is something that, as you guys know, as a football fan, I always love doing. I love turning the prism. So maybe we'll go over all the over-unders before we do my picks. I don't know. I've been trying to figure out something to be able to do for the Thursday show because I like doing picks on Friday because I want all the information that I can before I make the picks, who's going to be out to the best of our knowledge, to the best of everybody's knowledge and stuff like that, etc. So I do try to wait till Friday for those picks, but I got to figure out something for Thursday. Thursday could just be a general news day, especially with, the trade deadline and stuff. So I'm not sure what tomorrow night will be, or if there will be one. I'll be honest, Thursdays is kind of a wild card right now. But we'll definitely have, obviously, the picks on Friday night. All right. Whew, week 9. Can't believe it. Oh, I guess I should do my prediction for Thursday night football. Texans at the Jets. The Texans are actually underdogs. I don't know why. The line will probably flip Thursday morning because I know a lot of the wise guys are coming in on the Texans. They're putting a lot of stock into Stephon Diggs being out. They were home for the Colts game. I don't know. It's the Jets were at the Patriots, lost. I don't think the Jets are well coached enough to know what to do on a short week. Like, legitimately, this could be an ugly game. I think you're going to see a little bit more. Like, we've got, Robert Woods, John Michie is going to be back. I don't think Hutchinson's really going to come into play when it comes to the offense. Michie is the fast guy. Tank Dell now takes over the number one spot again. John Michie, I believe, will be the second. And then you got Hutchinson. Dalton Schultz. Look for Dalton Schultz and Cade Stover to really step up in their absence. This, if they're smart, this will start to look like a San Francisco or Kansas City offense using the tight ends in a lot of different ways. That's what this will look like. So, my prediction is going to be 20-17 Texans over the New York Jets. And if the Jets don't make the Hassan Reddick trade tomorrow, they will make this Hassan Reddick trade Friday morning, and it will be an all-out sellout. Maybe they'll trade Wilson too. I don't know. Texans beat the Jets, and then the Jets trade Garrett Wilson to the Texans. Good. We've seen stranger things happen. But can't wait for it. All right. Back down the time where it should be, back down to 33 minutes. Excellent. That is going to be all for me this evening, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for hanging out. As always, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like the podcast, and ring the notification bell. Hopefully, I will talk to you guys tomorrow night because we've got trade rumors to talk about, probably even the game. We'll see what happens. But nonetheless, you guys have a fantastic evening. And for Sports Talk with Hawk, I am Hawk, and I'm out.